The Galactic Empire stood as the epitome of technological superiority, a civilization that spanned thousands of star systems and ruled with unchallenged dominance. Their war machines, sleek and precise, rendered entire planets submissive with little effort. Plasma weapons that could vaporize targets in an instant, AI-driven drones capable of independent tactical decisions, these were the tools of their conquest. Anything that fell short of their technological marvels was dismissed as irrelevant, ancient, and ultimately laughable. When Earth fell under their rule, it barely registered as a conquest. The Empire viewed humanity as a quaint, backward species clinging to obsolete traditions and crude inventions. Among the artifacts seized from Earth's historical archives were weapons from various eras of human warfare. One such relic was the M1 Garand rifle, a semi-automatic firearm from the 20th century. To the Empire's officers, it was the epitome of Earth's inferiority, a metal stick incapable of standing against their advanced plasma-based arsenal. For the Empire, such artifacts were amusing diversions. In their mockery, high-ranking officials orchestrated demonstrations where Earth's weapons were compared to their own. An Empire commander, clad in the shimmering armor of his station, held an M1 Garand aloft during one such event. He sneered, proclaiming it a relic of a bygone age, its wooden stock and rudimentary mechanics symbolic of humanity's irrelevance in a galaxy dominated by superior technology. Laughter rippled through the assembled soldiers, a chorus of arrogance amplified by their perceived invincibility. Humanity, they believed, had nothing to offer. Advanced civilizations had transcended the need for such rudimentary tools. Plasma rifles could cut through alloys thicker than any Earth material, while drones operated with precision that human soldiers could never match. The Empire was built on these advancements, and they saw themselves as unstoppable, facing no threats worthy of consideration. On Earth, however, a different narrative was unfolding. The Galactic Empire's mockery had not gone unnoticed by those who still believed in humanity's spirit. Among them was a scattered group of resistance fighters, many of whom had seen firsthand the destruction wrought by the Empire. These individuals were more than just warriors. They were protectors of Earth's legacy, determined to preserve the essence of what made humanity unique. The M1 Garand, derided by the Empire, was more than a weapon to these fighters. It was a symbol of resilience, ingenuity, and the unyielding human spirit. Its simplicity was its strength, a design that had stood the test of time and carried countless soldiers through conflicts long before the stars became battlefields. The resistance had no illusions of overpowering the Empire's advanced forces with brute strength. Instead, they sought to turn the Empire's arrogance against them. Whispers of a plan began to take shape within the resistance. They had observed how the Empire's technology, for all its sophistication, was not infallible. Plasma rifles were prone to overheating during prolonged use, and their AI-driven drones, while efficient, operated on predictable algorithms. The Empire relied heavily on their technological edge, leaving them vulnerable to unconventional tactics. The Resistance's leaders knew they couldn't match the Empire in scale or resources. What they could do, however, was adapt. They saw the M1 Garand not as a relic, but as a weapon uniquely suited to exploit the Empire's blind spots. Its mechanical simplicity meant it could function in environments that disrupted the Empire's delicate systems, such as areas with electromagnetic interference or extreme weather conditions. This understanding became the foundation of their strategy. The M1 Garand was not a tool of the past, it was a means to level the playing field. While the Empire mocked its wooden stock and 8-round capacity, the Resistance saw precision, reliability, and a connection to their heritage. It was a weapon made for the hands of people who refused to be erased from history. The plan was audacious. The Resistance would lure a contingent of Empire forces into a terrain that negated their technological advantage. Using guerrilla tactics and the Garand's reliability, they would strike where the Empire was least prepared. It wasn't just about survival. It was a declaration that humanity would not fade quietly into the annals of subjugated species. For the Empire, Earth was a minor conquest, a footnote in their expanding dominion. For humanity, the battle ahead was a chance to prove that their legacy, embodied by a primitive rifle, was far from irrelevant. The Empire's laughter would soon echo hollowly in the face of the unyielding force that was the human spirit. The Galactic Empire's disdain for humanity extended beyond their advanced weaponry. It was embedded in their culture, their doctrine, their very way of life. Their soldiers, officers, and even their scientists viewed themselves as the pinnacle of progress, incapable of error. To them, the idea that a group of primitive rebels could pose a threat was not only absurd but insulting. Propaganda broadcasts frequently displayed images of Earth's outdated relics, with the M1 Garand being a favorite subject of ridicule. In one such broadcast, a high-ranking Empire commander, adorned in polished armor that shimmered with artificial brilliance, stood before a crowd of soldiers and scientists. He held an M1 Garand in his hands, turning it over with exaggerated incredulity. This, he declared, is the might of humanity? A wooden stick with metal parts? A relic so crude it can only fire a handful of shots before needing to be reloaded. His audience roared with laughter, the sound carrying an undertone of superiority that fueled their collective arrogance. Despite their mockery, the resistance listened carefully. The Empire's broadcasts, while intended as a tool of psychological dominance, often revealed more than they intended. The rebels knew that underestimating an opponent was a critical flaw, and they intended to exploit it. The more the Empire dismissed them, the less prepared they would be for the Resistance's plan. The rebels had no delusions about the odds they faced. The Empire's technological might was insurmountable in a direct confrontation. Plasma weapons could incinerate entire squads in seconds, and their drone armies could sweep across battlefields with devastating efficiency. But these strengths were also their weaknesses. The Empire had grown so reliant on their advanced systems that they had forgotten how to adapt to less conventional methods of warfare. The Resistance worked in secret, scattered across hidden bases deep in the wilderness. Engineers salvaged what they could from abandoned outposts, repurposing scraps into tools of defiance. Historians and archivists, once thought obsolete in the age of interstellar conquest, were now critical members of the team. They meticulously restored M1 Garand rifles, ensuring they were combat-ready and performing beyond their original specifications. Every weapon was tested, every flaw corrected. Among the Resistance fighters were veterans who had wielded the Garand in simulated battles during Earth's military training exercises. These individuals became instructors, passing on their knowledge to younger recruits who had never held a firearm before. In hushed voices, they explained the Garand's virtues: its semi-automatic firing capability, its simplicity, and its ability to endure conditions that would render Empire plasma rifles useless. They demonstrated the iconic ping of the en-bloc clip ejecting, a sound that became a rallying cry for the fighters. But beyond the technical training, the veterans imparted something even more valuable: a sense of purpose. The M1 Garand was more than a weapon. It was a connection to humanity's past, a symbol of resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. To wield it was to carry forward the legacy of those who had fought and bled for freedom long before the stars became their battlefield. As the rebels prepared, the Empire remained oblivious to the growing threat. Their surveillance drones swept the skies, their sensors scanning for energy signatures that matched plasma or laser-based weaponry. They never considered that the Resistance might rely on ballistic firearms, weapons so outdated that the Empire's detection systems barely registered them as threats. The rebels knew this was their advantage. They planned their operations meticulously, choosing locations where the Empire's technology would be least effective. Dense forests, narrow ravines, and areas prone to electromagnetic interference became their battlegrounds. These environments neutralized the Empire's drones and disrupted the energy fields that powered their plasma weapons. As the day of confrontation approached, the rebels finalized their strategy. They would use the Garand's accuracy and reliability to strike precise, devastating blows against the Empire's forces. Instead of facing the enemy head-on, they would adopt hit-and-run tactics, exploiting the terrain and their intimate knowledge of it. Each strike would be calculated, every shot aimed with precision. The Resistance was under no illusion that their efforts would overthrow the Empire. Their numbers were too small, their resources too limited. But this wasn't about immediate victory. It was about sending a message to the Empire, to humanity, and to the galaxy at large. A message that humanity, for all its flaws and perceived backwardness, was not to be underestimated. In the quiet moments before the battle, the resistance fighters gathered, their M1 Garands in hand. Some whispered prayers, others checked their weapons one final time. There was no bravado, no false confidence. Only determination. The Empire saw them as relics, much like the rifles they carried. But the rebels knew the truth. History was forged by those who refused to yield, no matter the odds. The Galactic Empire's arrogance had blinded them to the lessons of the past. The Resistance intended to teach them one shot at a time. The Galactic Empire's assault began with the precision and overwhelming force for which they were infamous. A fleet of their transport carriers descended onto the designated Resistance territory, deploying waves of drones and elite plasma soldiers. The skies shimmered with the glow of their energy weapons, and the hum of advanced machinery filled the air. They advanced with a practiced confidence, expecting another easy victory. After all, their scouts had detected nothing of concern. No plasma signatures, no advanced weaponry. To them, this was another routine operation to crush a few stragglers clinging to their outdated ways. The first sign of resistance came with a sharp crack that echoed through the dense forest. One of the Empire's soldiers, clad in shimmering combat armor, collapsed as a small, fast-moving projectile pierced the weak joint between his neck and shoulder. His comrades froze for a moment, scanning for plasma trails, but there were none. Another crack followed, and a drone fell from the sky, its delicate circuitry shattered by a single precise shot. Confusion rippled through the Empire's ranks. Their systems, designed to track and predict energy-based attacks, were useless against projectiles. The soldiers attempted to recalibrate their scanners, but the dense terrain and electromagnetic interference rendered them sluggish. Meanwhile, the Resistance fighters, concealed by the forest's natural cover, unleashed a coordinated assault. Each shot from an M1 Garand was deliberate, aimed with precision at weak points in the Empire's armor and drones. Unlike plasma weapons, which required heavy energy packs and constant cooling, the Garands were light, reliable, and unaffected by the environment. The rebels moved like ghosts, firing a few shots before retreating deeper into the woods, leaving the Empire troops disoriented and vulnerable. The Empire soldiers attempted to retaliate with suppressive plasma fire, but their weapons, designed for open-field combat, struggled in the forest's tight confines. Trees and rocks absorbed the brunt of their attacks, and the occasional plasma bursts that did find their targets were far too few to make a significant impact. The rebels, meanwhile, continued their methodical assault, picking off soldiers and drones with surgical precision. As the battle unfolded, the Empire's confidence began to erode. Their advanced technology, once thought infallible, was proving ineffective against an enemy using what they had deemed primitive weaponry. Frustration turned to panic as they realized their drones were falling at an alarming rate. The projectiles fired by the Garands shattered their delicate sensors and propulsion systems, rendering them useless. The Resistance had anticipated this. They had studied the Empire's tactics, knowing the rigid algorithms governing their drones made them predictable. The Garands, with their mechanical simplicity and high stopping power, were perfectly suited to exploit these weaknesses. Each Resistance fighter had been trained to prioritize drone targets first, crippling the Empire's reconnaissance and fire support capabilities. As the drones fell, the Empire soldiers found themselves increasingly isolated. Their reliance on AI-driven support systems had made them complacent, and without their drones to guide them, their formations became disorganized. The rebels capitalized on this, launching ambushes that further demoralized their enemies. One particularly devastating maneuver came when a group of Empire soldiers, desperate to regroup, stumbled into a narrow ravine. The rebels had anticipated this move and were lying in wait. As the soldiers entered the choke point, the Resistance fighters opened fire from above, their Garands cutting through the enemy ranks with brutal efficiency. The soldiers, unable to return effective fire in the confined space, were forced to retreat, leaving behind their wounded and destroyed equipment. The sound of the M1 Garand's distinctive ping as its clips ejected became a haunting refrain for the Empire forces. Each shot, each spent clip reminded them of their vulnerability. What they had dismissed as a relic of the past was now dismantling their most advanced troops and machinery. As the Empire's losses mounted, their commanders attempted to adapt, deploying heavier units equipped with reinforced armor. But even these measures proved ineffective. The rebels had studied the vulnerabilities of these units as well, targeting exposed joints and power sources with unerring accuracy. The Garands, despite their age, continued to perform flawlessly. By the time the Empire realized the full extent of their miscalculation, it was too late. Their forces were in disarray, their morale shattered. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire faced not just defeat, but humiliation. They had underestimated their enemy, and that arrogance had cost them dearly. The final moments of the battle saw the Empire's remaining forces retreating in chaos, their once formidable machines reduced to smoldering wreckage. The Resistance fighters, bloodied but unbroken, watched as the invaders fled, their cheers echoing through the forest. The M1 Garand, the so-called relic of Earth's past, had proven its worth on a battlefield dominated by the future. For the Galactic Empire, this was more than a tactical loss. It was a stark reminder that technological superiority alone did not guarantee victory. Against an enemy with ingenuity, adaptability, and an unyielding spirit, even the most advanced systems could falter. The battle had not just been won with weapons. It had been won with heart, strategy, and the enduring legacy of humanity's past. The battlefield, once a display of the Empire's overwhelming technological dominance, was now littered with the wreckage of their machines and the remnants of their shattered pride. The Galactic Empire, accustomed to swift and decisive victories, had been driven into a retreat that would be remembered for generations. Their soldiers, once assured of their invincibility, stumbled away in chaos, their glittering armor now marred by dirt, ash, and the unmistakable scars of ballistic impacts. For the Resistance, the victory was hard-fought and deeply personal. The sight of the Empire's forces retreating was more than just a tactical success. It was a vindication of humanity's resilience. The M1 Garand, once mocked as a symbol of obsolescence, had proven itself a weapon of unexpected strength. Each fighter who had carried it into battle felt a profound connection to their heritage, knowing they had defended their planet not with borrowed technology, but with a piece of their own history. As the adrenaline of the fight began to fade, the Resistance regrouped to assess their position. Medics moved quickly among the injured, their movements efficient and quiet. The survivors exchanged nods and brief smiles, their expressions marked by exhaustion but also triumph. Each rifle was carefully collected, inspected, and cleaned, its significance now more profound than ever. The Garand had become more than a tool of war. It was a symbol of defiance, a reminder that humanity's legacy could not be erased. Word of the battle began to spread, carried by whispers among the oppressed and subjugated species within the Empire's vast reach. News of how a small band of human rebels had repelled an elite Empire force with primitive weapons ignited a spark of hope in places long thought to be devoid of it. Stories of the M1 Garand's role in the battle grew, turning it into a legend. What had been dismissed as a relic was now a symbol of resistance, inspiring others to rise against their oppressors. The Empire, reeling from its unexpected defeat, was forced to confront its arrogance. The high-ranking officers who had once laughed at Earth's artifacts now faced questions from their superiors. Reports of the battle painted a picture of their failure, a humiliating reminder that their overconfidence had left them vulnerable. Strategists scrambled to understand how a weapon centuries old could dismantle their forces so effectively, their advanced simulations struggling to account for the human element, the adaptability and ingenuity that no algorithm could predict. Meanwhile, within the Resistance, the victory was both celebrated and deeply reflected upon. Leaders gathered to discuss their next steps, knowing that the Empire would not let this humiliation go unanswered. Yet, there was a newfound confidence among them, a belief that humanity could stand its ground even against an adversary as formidable as the Galactic Empire. The battle had proven that technology alone was not the ultimate determinant of power. It was the spirit of the people wielding it that mattered. In quiet moments, Resistance fighters shared stories of the battle, recounting how the Garand's reliability had saved their lives. Veterans who had once used the rifle in training now spoke of it with reverence, their voices filled with pride as they described its role in humanity's triumph. Younger fighters listened intently, their determination solidified by the knowledge that they were part of something greater than themselves, a continuation of a legacy that spanned generations. The M1 Garand, once destined to be forgotten in a museum or buried under the weight of the Empire's scorn, had become a unifying force. Resistance fighters began engraving the names of fallen comrades onto the stocks of their rifles, turning each weapon into a memorial. These rifles, now imbued with personal and collective history, became cherished artifacts, carried into battle not just as tools, but as reminders of what they were fighting for. As the resistance prepared for the inevitable counterattacks, they found strength in their victory. The Empire had been dealt a blow not just on the battlefield, but in their perception of humanity. What they had dismissed as weakness had turned out to be strength. What they had mocked had become their undoing. The rebels knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but they also knew they had something the Empire could never replicate: a relentless, unyielding spirit forged in the fires of adversity. Across the galaxy, the impact of the battle rippled outward. Other species, long subjugated by the Empire, began to take notice. They saw in humanity's triumph a possibility they had not dared to imagine. If Earth, with its so-called primitive tools, could stand against the Empire, then perhaps they too could rise. The resistance had not only defended their home, but had ignited a spark that could one day turn into a galaxy-wide rebellion. For the Empire, the defeat was more than a tactical loss. It was a psychological one. The very foundation of their dominance, unquestioned superiority, had been shaken. They now faced an enemy that they could not fully understand, an enemy that thrived on adaptability and refused to be bound by the rules of conventional warfare. For humanity, the victory was a reminder of their strength, their ingenuity, and their enduring legacy. The M1 Garand, a weapon of a bygone era, had become a symbol of everything they stood for. It was a testament to the idea that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the past could provide the tools to shape the future. As the resistance regrouped and prepared for the battles yet to come, they carried with them the lessons of their victory. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in generations, they felt something the Empire had long sought to extinguish: hope.